market movers. This is The Pulse with Francine Lacqua.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to The Pulse. I'm Francine Lacqua here in London. Our top story today, the U.S. and Iran remain locked in a standoff over the Strait of Hormuz, with both sides effectively choking off traffic during an extended ceasefire, and attacks from both sides on commercial vessels in the Strait continuing. Now, for more, we're joined by Bloomberg's Jumana Versace in Dubai. Jumana, good morning. Talk us through the latest developments and actually where you think negotiations stand.
Yeah, well, yesterday, once again, the White House reiterating that this is an indefinite ceasefire and they're waiting for Tehran to come back with their own proposal for a peace plan. But of course, we've not got any signals from Tehran that they plan to do so. Overnight, the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian once again linked further rounds of negotiations to the U.S. lifting the naval blockade. And so essentially what has happened here is the focus has now shifted to what is happening around the Strait of Hormuz. Yesterday, a very active day of incidents. And I should tell you that UK Navy reported that 2 ships came under fire. Iran reportedly then seized 2 ships. Wall Street Journal is saying that they seized 3 this morning. CENTCOM also said that they made 31 vessels turn around. And these are Iranian-linked vessels or Iranian-sanctioned vessels. And so what is going on here is essentially a standoff around the strait. You've got 2 blockades in place. And the thinking is that one of the sides will at some point have to yield. From Iran's perspective, the longer this goes on for, the more it's going to put upward pressure on oil prices. The thinking there is that it will eventually come to bite the U.S. and the U.S. president. And at the same time, U.S. President Trump keeps asserting that the longer the U.S. naval blockade goes on for, the more it's going to harm the Iranian economy, which will force the Iranian hand and bring them back to the negotiating table. Who is going to fold first, I think, is a big question for the markets. But at this point, no real signs that these negotiations or another round of diplomatic talks are going to take place. And plus, there's still a real possibility, once again, Francine, that hostilities flare up if the state of the strait continues to worsen.
Jumana, thank you so much for the update. Jumana Versace there in Dubai. Now, Bloomberg also understands that the U.S. Navy Secretary John Phelan has been fired after clashing with top leaders at the Pentagon. Let's bring in Laura Davison, Bloomberg's Washington Deputy Bureau Chief. Laura, so the U.S. Army Chief stepped down earlier this month. Now the U.S. Navy Secretary is gone. What's happening at the Pentagon?
Yeah, so we're starting to see a bunch of top Trump officials getting the ouster. Just earlier this month, it was a dispute about promoting specific generals. That was the top uniformed officer at the Army. And just yesterday, the top civilian leader at the Navy, also after clashing with Stephen Feinberg, who's the Deputy Defense Secretary, and Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, over shipbuilding priorities, also was asked to resign. So this is, sort of a real shakeup at the Pentagon at a really precarious moment where you have the U.S. military engaged in one of its most ambitious, operations in some years, and particularly this week with the Navy being, really in the spotlight, with the Strait of Hormuz sort of being the center of all of the conflict in the Middle East, in the war in Iran. This is a timing that is while not directly connected, according to our reporting, is really quite auspicious that there is so much turnover there, particularly when it's seen by, top military people that, especially in a conflict, you want to keep top people in their role. This is also at a moment where Trump more broadly across the administration is firing people. We've seen him fire about 3 cabinet officials, the Attorney General, as well as the Secretary of Homeland Security, and just last week, the Secretary of Labor also, have been shown the door. So this is a real moment as Trump is facing flagging poll numbers, a war in Iran that is not going his way. He's looking to shake up his top team.
Laura, thanks so much. Laura Davison there, Bloomberg's Washington Deputy Bureau Chief. Now, geopolitical uncertainty, of course, once again hitting sentiment. Joining us now is Hugh Gimber, Global Market Strategist at JPMorgan Asset Management. Hugh is also staying for the next 20 minutes as we kind of decipher together a lot of the earnings news as well. Hugh, it's just difficult to know what happens next, right? There was also reports that actually demining of the Strait of Hormuz takes 6 months. So I don't know if what happens to inflation, demand, and the economy.
Yeah, directionally, we know what's happening here, which is inflation's heading higher. We've already started to see evidence of that But I think more tellingly, it's the growth slowdown that's to come. We've had PMI data out this morning where manufacturing is holding up perfectly well because people are front-loading for now, but it's services where we're seeing the squeeze. And this, I think, importantly, is where the central bank tone has changed over the past month. The message in March was inflation, inflation, inflation. We need to be ready to act. And I think rightly now there's greater acknowledgement that the longer this goes on, the bigger the hit to the consumer, the bigger the hit to growth, and therefore you question really the value in delivering rate hikes now.
I mean, you could get into the nightmare scenario of stagflation.
So directionally, growth is coming off and inflation is pushing up. I still think stagflation in terms of a recession is a long way away because we entered this shock with the economy in such good shape. Corporate balance sheets looking strong, consumer balance sheets also healthy. So there's an element of resilience to this shock. But this is where the US, the longer it goes, the more the pain is going to be felt, and likewise on the Iranian side, which is why I still think markets are looking at this issue and saying, we don't know when it's going to be solved, but we know it will be solved because ultimately one side is going to have to back down.
But if you look at central banks, and I know a lot of them are thinking also about 2022, where they were just late to the game because of what happened in Ukraine and that energy shock. I mean, does it make more sense to actually, hike now and then quickly cut, or wait?
So for me, it's all about patience here. Optionality, if you're a central banker, is the critical word. Lagarde herself has been talking more recently about how ultimately the ECB does not know where this is headed. And she's leaning out a list of questions and basically saying the data will tell us which way these fall in the next few weeks. And therefore, my question for the meetings next week would be, why act now when you simply don't know where things are going to be in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks' time? So you can understand why they're wary of really fighting the last crisis, which unfortunately is what many central banks have a habit of doing. But here I think some patience is required because of that acknowledgement that this is, yes, an inflation shock, but also a growth shock.
But Hugh, how do you model the markets? So is it how much pain will come if Brent stays at 102, 103 for the next 6 months, as opposed to maybe 140 and then back down again?
Yeah, so this all comes down to US consumption. Ultimately, that's what's driving the economy, and that is critically linked to the labour market. As long as the labour market holds up, as long as incomes are remaining steady, consumption tends to remain at pretty good levels. Naturally, you see the rotation underneath the surface. Take airlines, for example, an area where consumers will be pulling back because typically they'll refuse to moderate their petrol spending or their gas spending. So I think this is more rotational at this point. The longer it goes, the more you're likely to see the labour market slowing. That's when you start to think more about a significant pullback in overall consumption. But for the time being, this is more a rotation in where consumers are spending their dollars and pounds.
Okay, Hugh, keep that thought because I'll get back to you. I want to know about where you see dollar next, but also some of these earnings. Hugh Gimber, global market strategist at JPMorgan Asset Management, stays with us. Tesla now plans to spend more than $25 billion this year to pivot from electric vehicles towards AI and robotics. Now, the automaker also saw European new registrations jump 84% as it continues its comeback after a bruising 2025. Stefan Nicola, our autos editor, joins us. So, Stefan, how is the massive investment going to be deployed?
Yeah, Francine, well, Tesla is spending a lot of money on AI, on computing power, on robotics. Its humanoid robot project is still on the way. It's also expanding its robotaxi efforts in the United States. So a big push on digital technologies there and expanding with data centers for AI. The main message here from Elon Musk to investors is, hey, we're not an EV maker anymore. We're morphing into this big conglomerate of AI, robotics, and autonomous driving. And yeah, that's helped the shares last year. And this is driving optimism down the road for Tesla.
Yeah, I mean, what's amazing is just the numbers involved, right? We also found out that it's $3 billion that Tesla will spend on the research chip factory in Texas. What do we actually know about what they're looking to do?
Yeah, the facility in Texas is a smaller scale research facility that it's running with Intel technology and also in a bigger sort of chip corporation with SpaceX. This facility will probably test new technology for Tesla. It's a smaller scale, as I said. Big chip factories can run into $20 billion cost, $30 billion cost. So this is a smaller hedge play, I would say, and another message by Elon that it's really seeing chips as a core competency for Tesla rather than something it wants to outsource, especially as access to chips is getting scarce these days.
Stefan, thank you so much. Stefan Nicolau there, our autos editor. Now let's get back to Hugh. Hugh, when you look at, this is a story really of investment. The numbers around AI, again, are just mind-boggling. So where do you stand on AI, and do you see investment only coming actually from the space?
So Tesla's reaction last night I thought was really interesting because it delivered a strong set of results and then came the CapEx announcement and the market reaction changed. That was a pattern we saw right the way through the Q4 earnings season. It was not enough to beat on earnings. You had to be beating on earnings and demonstrating CapEx discipline. Because when we tie this to what's going on elsewhere in the world, the question I think that investors are all trying to grapple with is how much of these increased CapEx commitments are coming due to new capacity. How much of them are just coming because things are getting more expensive? The energy costs, the semiconductor costs, the memory and the gas that goes into producing those semiconductors, it's all getting more expensive. And therefore, in every earnings announcement, you're now having to say, well, OK, this is a bigger number. That used to be good. But now you're trying to pass through and say, well, is that simply cost inflation, which makes that ROI even harder? Or is this genuine new capacity that's being delivered? Yeah,
but the concern is that you're in this massive race, right? Everyone is in this race to also build better so that CapEx has to come. So is there a skew towards the markets? I don't know what the markets need or what's priced in actually for a lot of these earnings.
This is where, depending on where you sit within the ecosystem, is critical. You look at someone like an NVIDIA, they're set to deliver almost 40% of this quarter's earnings growth themselves. Tech in itself is doing about 80% of the heavy lifting for the market. So whether you're a semiconductor name fueling this drive and this new spending, whether you're a Korean name providing that memory, you're really, really doing very well out of all of these new CapEx commitments. On the other side of it, the hyperscalers and the spenders now are starting to be punished by the market because there's just that lack of clarity about the ultimate ROI.
But if you also look at AI, the markets are not looking at it through an economic perspective. It must be deflationary, is it not?
Well, it takes us on to what we're hearing out of Washington over the past few days. I think there are still significant question marks about how much of this we can read into the real economy impact. Right. Just look at what's happening in businesses everywhere. AI is clearly a time saver today. Yeah. But from an economic standpoint, for that to be productive, where are you using that time? Are people just having slightly better days? Are they having slightly longer lunches? Or are they driving that extra time back into the economy and producing more output? Because ultimately, that is the test that has to be passed to deliver higher productivity. And I still think we're too early.
And just very quickly, this is what Kevin Warsh is all about, right? I don't think he's ever really promised to cut interest rates. He promised to, somehow cut interest rates because of the AI kind of overhang.
But he's also saying he wants to work on realized inflation. That was one of his other big messages this week. We don't like the way that the current Fed is forecasting too far ahead. We want to be working on what the data is telling us now. So there's a conflict, I think, that the market's going to have to work through here. Ultimately, the message for me from the hearings that we've had so far is about additional Treasury volatility, because this Fed is going to be less predictable than prior Feds. You could have a chair that's dissenting against the vote. I think the role of the chair under a Warsh Fed changes quite significantly, and therefore you have to demand higher risk premia because you have less visibility on where rates are going.
So interesting. Hugh, thank you so much. Hugh Gimber stays with us. We'll talk about earnings. We'll discuss a potential setback for Europe's most valuable company. That's coming up next. And this is Bloomberg. TSMC is delaying using ASML's newest, most advanced chip-making machines until at least 2029 to save money. Well, joining us now is Neil Campling, Bloomberg's senior strategist. Also with us still, Hugh Gimber from JPMorgan Asset Management. Neil, so good to speak to you. Thank you for sticking around, Hugh. But what does this mean for ASML? I mean, when you say, actually, you're too expensive, I'm going to cut back, is it great news? No.
On the surface, no. A year ago, TSM said they were evaluating these machines. Now, the current technology costs around $200 million per piece of kit. Pretty expensive. But the next generation of the high NA is over $400 million. So a significant step up in cost. TSMC are working on internal solutions. Whether they'll be able to replicate the kind of technology ASML can remains to be seen, given how advanced really these machines are. And it's really the only game in town. It's basically a complete monopoly on this kind of advanced technology. So we'll have to wait and see. But it's certainly, I think it's a tactic perhaps for TSM to bring ASML to the bargaining table in terms of pricing of these machines.
But if you're TSMC, so I mean, I think this is a bold move. And what do you do in the meantime?
So this technology that they have is for the next generation of the chip tools. But given the advances we have within the AI chips, so you need to have the most advanced machines. So whether TSMC can try and develop something in-house, given that they are the actual chip designer and producer, they're not the equipment producer. So I am sceptical that TSMC will get to the promised land on their own, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, again, your take on this is, costs are going up. Are we going to see some of these quirky market moves at times?
I think it's a good reminder here that trying to understand who the market leaders will be in 5 years' time is almost impossible in the tech space. We've seen that throughout the decades, the change in leadership. And I'm not saying that we've learned enough to be able to rule out ASML entirely, but I think it shows you that when the supply chains are this concentrated, a small number of decisions can change a company's position very quickly. And so could you say today you have sight in 5 years' time of who the winners are? Have you been able to say for the last couple of years who is the best LLM out there? It's changed every 3-6 months. And so this, I think, is just another reminder of how quickly this space is moving, and therefore you'll need to be active within the tech space to be keeping up with these trends.
But Neil, is the space also moving away from European players? Because there are question marks over Mistral AI and whether they can actually cope with the big ones in the US. If ASML now is also having question marks, it kind of leaves Europe in a very vulnerable place.
There are very few leaders in technology in Europe in the first place, and clearly ASML has also been hit by some of the export restrictions that came out of the US to use the advanced machines in China. So ASML is not insulated in that respect, and clearly the other factor of getting these machines and the tools out to the likes of Taiwan and Korea aren't easy when you have things like what's going on in the Middle East at the moment. So it is, there are a number of challenges that ASML faces, for sure.
Hugh, I like your point that actually you're right. The fortune of some of these companies can change fairly swiftly. So how do you make a bet as an investor?
Well, I mean, with or without ASML, I think Europe is too late in terms of playing the tech provision in terms of the technology itself. It's now about the adoption for Europe. That's where Europe can win on AI.
But for example, for Mythos, and we heard this, I was in DC and you could hear it in the corridors. It's like if you don't have access, because Mythos, Anthropic is giving access to some of Wall Street to play around with it to see whether they can help in cybersecurity. If you're a European company and you don't have access to that, it's also the banks that could be, not left behind, but in a worse position.
I think that's fair, but I mean, I think it's very hard to imagine a world where you still only have 5, 6, 10 companies with access to this kind of technology in a few quarters down the line. What's interesting to me is we still have this market pricing the winners and losers of AI in terms of those at the forefront and those that are meant to be the customers. That's Europe's role. It's providing the revenue for the companies to generate the return on investment, whether that's coming from the banks, manufacturing, healthcare. It would be a mistake here, in my mind, for Europe to be trying to be a big LLM provider or a big data center provider, because they're just too far behind. But that doesn't mean that Europe has to lose in this AI story if the market's appreciation for the role in your place in the ecosystem starts to change from those hardware manufacturers towards the adopters who ultimately have to provide the revenue to generate that return on investment.
Well said. Intel, so they're also giving an update to investors, and actually some of the valuations, I mean, you were telling me, what are you expecting from Intel? But also valuations are crazy.
The market's expecting a lot, given the stock is up over 200% in the last year. It's had the investments from the US government clearly recently, but I was staggered to find out this morning through our TechWatch column that actually it is the most expensive stock on a forward price earnings multiple in the SOX index. It's at 90 times forward earnings. It's more expensive than any of the other constituents. There's a lot of expectations for a company that, dare I say it, is way behind the technology curve to the point about the fast mover adoptions of new winners and losers. Intel has not been a winner in terms of technology development for over a decade. And I don't see any evidence yet that that's going to change anytime soon.
I mean, that's just an extraordinary fact. Thank you both for joining us. Our Bloomberg senior strategist, Neil Campling, and thanks also to Hugh Gimber, global market strategist at JPMorgan Asset Management. Now, Boeing has reported lower than expected cash outflow as it delivered the most aircraft in the first quarter since 2019. Let's bring in Bloomberg's managing editor for aviation, Benedict Kamel, who's in Berlin. Benny, so what do the results tell us about the company's rebound from the multitude of challenges it's had?
Well, if you think about Boeing in the last couple of years, this has really been a company in crisis. And what we heard from them yesterday really cemented this image that this is a company that has come back and that is doing much better than it was only 6 months ago and certainly a year or two ago. So this is a real recovery story for the company. And you saw it in the numbers. They are not quite generating cash again now, but they are very close to doing so. They said that by the second half of the year, they want to be cash positive again. And they put out a long-term target once again, which had existed a long time ago and then sort of went away. And that is, we want to generate $10 billion in cash again. And we heard from the CFO yesterday saying that they can even go beyond that. So all in all, a really strong set of results. No sort of skeletons in the closet. I'll go as far as saying it was almost boring, which is a good thing. So it was a very straight set of numbers. And if I think about the last couple of quarters of Boeing earnings, it was always a sort of hair on fire kind of moment, and that was not the case yesterday.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, Boeing is probably like, yes, we're boring for once. Meanwhile, American airline earnings due after the bell. What can we expect?
So American is the last of the big four U.S. carriers to report. We've heard from Delta, from Southwest, from United, and the outlook there across the board is very cautious. We had some airlines retracting their outlooks. We had some airlines declining to reaffirm it, and all of that is down to the fuel situation. As we know, fuel costs have soared over the last couple of weeks. They've doubled in some cases, and that is really hitting airlines hard across the board. We heard from Scott Kirby yesterday, the CEO of United, saying that we have to pass this on to the consumer ultimately. That means higher ticket prices. So we will hear from American on that today, sort of how they are coping with this. The other big sort of, should we call it, elephant in the room is the consolidation story. We have reported that United and American, or that United at least approached the idea of combining with American. American have said they're not interested, but obviously they'll be asked about this today.
Benny, thanks so much. Benedict Kamel there with the very latest on aviation. Coming up, attention turns to how the U.S. and Iran can break the deadlock over the Strait of Hormuz as a fragile peace deal grinds to a halt. We'll be talking to Fawaz Gerges from London School of Economics. That's next, and this is Bloomberg. Well, good morning and welcome to The Pulse. I'm Francine Lacqua here in London, and these are your top stories. The U.S. and Iran are locked in a battle for the control of the Strait of Hormuz after failing to meet for a fresh round of peace talks. Meanwhile, the Pentagon says the U.S. Navy Secretary is standing down effective immediately. Tesla is ramping up billions of dollars in additional spending to transform the electric vehicle pioneer into an AI and robotics company. Plus, TSMC, the world's biggest chip maker, says ASML's latest machines are too expensive, dealing a blow to Europe's most valuable company. Now, we are getting some data out of the UK, extremely important given the fine balancing act that the Bank of England has to do. Look, the UK April composite PMI has risen to 52 compared to the forecast of 49.8, and that's just the very latest of data. Remember, it's next week that the Bank of England decides on the same day as the ECB. Now, France's forecasting office has flagged suspected tampering with weather sensors at the country's largest airport. The office referred the case to police after detecting unusual readings alongside heavy betting on a popular prediction market. It's a wild story. For more, I'm joined by Bloomberg's weather and climate reporter, Joe Wertz. So, Joe, talk us through what happened.
Yeah, so there were a couple days in April where there were these anomalous spikes in temperature readings at the Charles de Gaulle Airport, the weather station there. And, some independent meteorologists on a very lively weather discussion forum flagged this to the forecasting office there. And they took a look and examined both the weather station at the airport and the data and found signs of possible tampering with the weather station there. They referred the matter over to the police. The police have referred it for investigation for potential charges. The reason this is such a big deal is that the weather sensor at the Paris airport is used to settle these contracts on Polymarket, where one of these prediction markets where people are betting on different things. And so there's been a lot of interest and suspicion from traders on there that this data was potentially manipulated.
I mean, I do find it a crazy story. I didn't know you could do predictions like that. What kind of activity have prediction markets seen regarding weather betting recently?
Yeah, we've seen a real boom in weather betting on these prediction markets, places like Polymarket and Kalshi. Yeah, you could bet on anything on these markets. People are betting on, during the big New York City blizzard we had earlier this year, people were betting on total snow amounts that would fall in Central Park. People bet on high temperatures. People bet on low temperatures. They bet on the amount of rainfall that might fall in a particular area. So these weather bets are on these thriving prediction markets alongside all sorts of bets about politics, about government, about sports. And we're seeing, more and more of these pop up for weather phenomenon. And this has, really been a magnet for all sorts of traders, from meteorologists, from weather nerds, from sort of amateur people who kind of watch the weather, all the way to like AI companies and weather tech firms using these prediction markets to test their models and test their predictive tools. So we've really seen a boom there. Yeah.
And I know people are also, wagering on who the next James Bond will be. So and we have a great explainer, Joe, which I really read with great interest, saying, look, how the prediction markets turned the world into a casino. So I urge everyone to go on Bloomberg to read that. Joe, thank you so much for all of your reporting. Joe Wertz, Bloomberg's weather and climate reporter. Now, EU leaders are meeting in Cyprus amid mounting economic pressures from the Iran conflict, with the oil and gas price spike already costing the bloc 22 billion euros. Ukraine has also returned to the forefront of the agenda after Hungary lifted its veto on Brussels' 90 billion euro loan to Kyiv. Bloomberg's chief Europe correspondent Oliver Crook is on location in Nicosia. Ollie, how is the EU looking to tackle the energy price shock from the Iran conflict? And good morning.
Good morning, Francine. Yeah, for European leaders, they're really stuck in this sort of messaging campaign here, where on the one hand, they want to sort of demonstrate how worried they are about this energy crisis, really sort of impress the urgency while also not sort of inspiring panic. And that's all happening as we're starting to see this hit really very directly on inflation figures for the month of March. We're now seeing it hit GDP forecasts out of Germany, for example, halving not just their growth for this year, but also cutting off about 400 basis points of growth for next year, which is obviously very, very significant. But we're not yet at the moment here, it feels like, with European leaders for the break the glass moment, reaching for really emergency measures to go really hard on this. It does feel a little bit like a little bit of wishful thinking that this is going to resolve itself. But what European leaders will be discussing today and tomorrow here in Cyprus will be some of the measures they can take at the European level. Those are fairly limited right now. They're not talking about the kinds of things they were talking about after the invasion of Ukraine. They were talking about gas price caps at that point. We're not there yet. But there is a conversation about coordinating gas storages between member states of the European Union, also making sure that jet fuel gets distributed sort of equitably across the European Union, because often in these situations you have nations like Germany that can really afford to pay for these fuels while some of the others cannot. They will also potentially loosen state aid rules to make things a little bit easier, but the broader sort of project here from the Europeans' perspective and the EU's perspective is that this is an argument for electrification, for moving away from all fossil fuel supplies. We know the ones from Russia are out, the ones from the Gulf are now threatened, and you have to wonder about the ones from the United States. When you have a sort of fuel shortage issue across the world, what does America First energy policy mean? And the Europeans are more dependent than they've ever been on the United States. Could those supplies come into jeopardy if things get very serious?
Ollie, how significant also is this loan for Ukraine?
It's absolutely, it's completely essential for the Ukrainians. We've heard from Zelensky. For them, this is a matter of survival. Now, finally, we have Viktor Orban honoring his word from the agreement back in December, lifting his veto, meaning that 90 billion euros can start flowing to Ukraine. When it starts flowing is absolutely essential. They have been saying that they need it really by April. Not sure that it will hit that deadline, but it appears that that is now moving forward. But there's a broader conversation here that will begin at the European leader level here, Francine, which is the post-Orban sort of European political structure. Now that Orban is out, that there will be a new government within Hungary by really the middle of May is what we're expecting. What else can be achieved here? Can we move forward, for example, on Russian sanctions? Are there other European initiatives that can move forward? And one of those initiatives, Francine, that is being discussed at the highest level and is really accelerating is the timeline, getting the timeline down for Ukraine potentially joining the European Union. That is something we spoke about with the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister this week. He was in talks in negotiations this week in Brussels. He says that they're 40% of the way there in terms of the reforms. They'd like to see it happen next year. So that is going to be one of the big questions and conversations here among European leaders. And Zelensky will arrive a little bit later this evening to have those discussions.
Ollie, thanks so much. Oliver Cork there, Bloomberg's chief Europe correspondent. Now let's get some further analysis on the Middle East. I'm joined by Fawaz Gerges, the professor of international relations at the London School of Economics. Professor, thank you for joining us. I mean, things are very unclear at the moment. It's up and down whether there's any kind of negotiation possible, and it's very difficult to see where they end up. How do you see this playing out in the next couple of weeks?
What we have now is a stalemate. We have an impasse between the United States and Iran. And we should not be surprised. I think what we're talking about really are high-stake diplomacy. And high-stake diplomacy is a continuation of war by other means. So even though the guns have fallen silent, but both sides are positioning themselves to basically gain a strategic advantage. Just to give our viewers a glimpse or a context of what we're talking about, the 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and the Obama administration took 20 months of hard work, countless hours of give and take, of meetings. You cannot resolve the U.S.-Iranian conflict in 20 hours or in 40 hours. I think it's going to take a long time, but here's the big picture. For our viewers, Iran has been able to turn a weak hand into a strong one. And President Trump finds himself in a strategic bind. He's desperate to exit the war. The war has been catastrophic for the world economy. The war has failed to achieve its political ends. And President Trump keeps blinking.
But Professor, I mean, is this about, negotiating a lasting agreement or at least some kind of compromise? I mean, is a, very put together, maybe even dirty compromise better than no compromise at the moment?
What President Trump wants, he wants basically a grand bargain. President Trump does not really like small, limited agreements. And that's what J.D. Vance, the vice president, said. Iran has no trust in President Trump because, as we know, President Trump carried out 2 major attacks on Iran while Iran was talking to the United States. So they want ironclad commitments that the United States and Israel will not attack Iran again. And Iran wants to bargain, to negotiate. I think, the big picture for our viewers, President Trump feels that he has won, and he wants to impose his terms on Iran. He basically wants Iran to accept American demands, American, conditions. While Iran says, look, you failed to really basically change the regime or even to force us to surrender. They want to bargain. They want to compromise. At the end of the day, my take on it, both sides have a vested interest in bridging their divide. And I think it's a matter of time. And that's really what high-stake diplomacy is all about.
But, Professor, so we don't have a good understanding, actually, of how strong the regime is in Iran, of how much they've been hit because of access. Do you have any understanding exactly on what this Iranian regime wants to achieve and what they can achieve given their strength, or not?
If you ask me what's the biggest bargaining card that Iran has now and will have in the future, it has a stranglehold over the Strait of Hormuz. It's much bigger. It's much more important than Iran's defunct nuclear program. And as we've seen what's happening in the world economy, 40% surge in oil and gas prices. I mean, this is the greatest energy disruption crisis in world history. So at the end of the day, what Iran wants, it wants basically America to lift the sanctions on Iran. It wants its asset to be unfrozen. It wants basically to have the right for domestic enrichment at home. And more importantly, it wants international guarantees that the United States will not attack Iran again, either from China or even a Security Council resolution. So at the end of the day, it seems to me that President Trump really, the reason why he's in a strategic bind, because he wants a better agreement than the one signed by President Barack Obama. He is obsessed with President Barack Obama. And at the end of the day, he won't be able to get a better agreement than the 2015 agreement.
Right, because at the moment, in 2015, there was no talk about the Strait of Hormuz. Now, effectively, Iran is controlling a large part of it.
It's not just a part. I mean, shipping has basically ended in the Strait of Hormuz. Literally, yesterday, one ship. And Iran yesterday seized two major cargo ships. And in fact, and that's why, I mean, in terms of insurance for shipping is almost, 100% in terms of extra payment. Not to mention, I mean, you're talking about 10 million barrels of oil missing from the market. And it's been going on for 7 weeks. Imagine if the crisis continues for, let's say, a few months. This will be devastating to the world economy, not to mention the American economy. Inflation in the U.S., 3.3%. Even here in the UK, in Europe, is very hurting as a result of energy prices, fertilizers, food. 40 million people in the developing world have plunged into poverty. I mean, this is a global crisis. And that's why Iran has been able to really turn a weak hand militarily into a stronger hand economically and also in terms of shipping, blocking the Strait of Hormuz and increasing pain to the world economy, including the American economy.
Fawaz Gerges, thank you so much for joining us, International Relations Professor at the London School of Economics. Now, oil flowing again through the Druzhba pipeline, this according to the Hungarian refiner MOL, with the first deliveries expected in Hungary and Slovakia today. Now, the repairs to the pipeline, which was damaged by a Russian attack in January, and months of deadlock over a $90 billion loan from the EU to Kyiv. Now, for more, we're joined by Greg Sullivan, Bloomberg's Russia Economy and Government Editor. Greg, so good to speak to you again. So just how important is this loan for Ukraine to keep defending itself against Russia?
It's incredibly important. Ukraine has been defending against the Russian invasion for 4 years. Its economy has been really taking a hit from that. U.S. aid has practically evaporated since Donald Trump came to office. This is essential. They had only a few more weeks of funding left before this. So now that it's coming, it's basically a 2-year lifeline to Ukraine. Stepping back more broadly, though, it also shows that the EU is now better positioned to support Ukraine and be a more solid position of aid to Ukraine. And we see that with also not just the loan, but a sanctions package that appears ready to move against Russia.
Yeah, and how is Russia at the moment? I mean, first of all, there are loads of implications for Russia with, this new developments, but also the war in the Middle East has a massive impact on actually Russian exports.
Absolutely. And up until this point, Russia has really seen their ability to capitalize on that, somewhat curbed by Ukrainian drone strikes on exporting facilities. They are poised to relieve some pressure on their budget deficit. Obviously, spending is very inflated because of the war. The Russian economy is sagging, and it's poised to slow, possibly even tip into recession. So they are struggling economically. But, as you said, the surge in oil prices could ease some of that pressure nonetheless. And again, it's somewhat ironic that these are Russian oil flows in Druzhba heading into the EU as they try to divorce themselves from Russian energy.
Greg, I mean, overall, there's a lot less focus, of course, on this conflict because the Middle East has been left, right, and center, and rightly so. But does it really matter for the battlefield on the ground in Ukraine?
Yes, absolutely. Right now the battlefield is pretty much at a stalemate. Each side can claim some gains, but the line isn't really moving. Drone warfare, Ukraine's advantage there has kept Russian advances somewhat at bay. But, a lapse in funding would have been a huge vulnerability for Ukraine, and that could tip the playing field. Likewise, a surge in oil revenue could really help Russia. So both sides are trying to jockey for an advantage while the battlefield remains at a stalemate. So it is really significant, this loan package.
Greg, as always, thanks so much for joining us. Greg Sullivan there, Bloomberg Russia economy and government editor. Now, coming up, we discuss what it takes to outperform the market during times of increased volatility. We speak to hedge fund Foxtail Pine next, and this is Bloomberg. Well, hedge funds had a strong recovery in early April, recouping some of the huge losses made in March when the outbreak of war in Iran upended investment strategies. Now, in this world of increased volatility, but also geopolitical uncertainty, what does it take these days to outperform the market? Well, joining us now is Stirling Larkin, Chief Executive, hedge fund Foxtail Pine. Stirling, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, you also have an interesting story because you had the shop in Asia, basically, and you've recently moved to the U.S. So I want to explore that a little bit. But first, how can some of the smaller managers, is it difficult to keep up in a world dominated by these multi-strategy giants like Millennium and Citadel?
Good morning. No, that's a really poignant question. What's really exciting is I think in the next 4 years, there'll be more money made in markets than the last 20 combined.
Okay.
And the context of that is there's obviously a lot of bad news in the media at the moment and the headlines and the sentiment. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals are basically putting us in a Goldilocks scenario for the next 2 to 3 years.
I mean, the fundamentals at the moment look a bit, not ropey, but there's so much volatility, which also creates opportunities. How did you perform through that volatility in March?
We basically come from a mantra's point of view and off the back of reflation, basically. So all the money that was printed through the era, as of right now, 26.3% of the global economy, not just markets, but the actual economy is bedrocked off the balance sheet of central banks. And that really is a fundamental driver why we're seeing, for example, in the last week, markets bounce higher, even though there's no technical reason why they did. There's just a girth of liquidity still in the system for good and bad reasons, but it is still there, and it's a fundamental reality of the world we live in.
And so where do you see the biggest opportunities right now?
Yep, equities. It's still equities. I mean, that was the whole point of the policy. And again, we're going to see a lot of volatility in fixed income, etc. AI, all these things are causing headwinds, but at the end of the day, that pushes it up the capital stack and into those risk assets.
It feels like March actually, really tested the multi-strat model for producing steady returns because so many people lost money given the market conditions.
I mean, it was a particularly unusual year, particularly in the US. It was the only year, even including the Great Depression, where the market went sideways for the most weeks since November of last year. And then obviously in the last 10 days, we've seen a rip higher. But again, that just talks about the underlying liquidity that's still in the real economy and obviously flowing through the markets.
I mean, what did you learn during that period? I mean, it feels like, it was yesterday, but it's moved on since.
Yes. I mean, politics rarely actually has a real impact on markets. I think politics this year is having an impact. You had a fantastic guest on a few days ago, Baroness, and she was talking about from a Keynesian point of view. And she's right from some degree, but you may want to look at it from maybe more from Friedman's point of view, a mantra's point of view, that liquidity is still under rocking the whole economy and has a massive impact. But we have seen this year with what's happening in politics here in Europe and obviously North America that it did push the market sideways for an unusually long period of time.
Stirling, last time I interviewed you was in Singapore for a New Economy Forum, and since you moved from, basically servicing Asian clients to the U.S., has that changed the dynamic of the fund? I
mean, I've always really been passionate and focused on North America, and I guess living there, what's fantastic about being in New York in particular is you really see what's coming around the corner 2 or 3 months from now, and the sentiment is still very, very bullish. Politically, obviously, in the headlines we talked about before may have, some temporary whatever to them. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot of money in the system and there's a lot of money to be deployed for the rest of this year.
How are you using AI in your investments, and how will that be accelerated or changed in the coming years?
I mean, AI in itself is reflationary, and simply because, as we know, there's some big IPOs coming out there. There's going to either be private savings or credit and debt, and that credit and debt has to come from the private market. We're talking potentially trillions of dollars, and that in itself is reflationary. So it's a good sign that it's not just central banks adding liquidity to the system. The private markets are going to be a massive driver of liquidity, which is exactly what money printing and MMT was designed to do 3 or 4 years ago.
But does it change? I don't know whether it makes it harder actually to stand out.
Sure, but I think on the net, AI is going to be very exciting. I mean, LLMs themselves, they're still quite dumb in many regards. People talk about AI as one big bucket, but there's a lot to AI. But we're talking about technology in 2003 or the electrification of the grid in 1915. We're still very early in these stages. And I think this is a multiplier that will have massive beneficial impact socially, but also for markets and investors as well.
Stirling, how much do you look at the longer term implication, what's happening in the Middle East for some of these financial hubs?
Yep.
Like, Dubai and others were really a pool of capital. Does that get questioned? Does it change over time?
Yep. I think where the market is misreading it is oil at the moment is actually is not necessarily inflationary, because oil is price inelastic. Where it obviously does have an impact is on the US dollar, and the US, for better or worse, and its actions for military actions, is still a massive supplier, and where Europe and Asia still have to turn for LNG and gas and oil for the next 2 to 3 years. Whether that's a good or bad thing, that's for individuals to decide. But I still think there is a bullish case for why the US dollar ends up the beneficiary in this.
I'm sure you've seen, we've had some, really funny stories about gazumping and talent and how it's difficult to retain talent and hold on to it. When you look at candidates to hire, what kind of profile are you looking for?
People are passionate about markets. You really have to love this. Markets are going to continue to change. We are in an unusual period in the fact that technology is becoming a part of our day job, as well as understanding the fundamentals of economics. And at the end of the day, nothing's really changed in the fact that you really have to love what you do and have to love the underlying economy and the dynamics around that.
Is there a particular focus on less experienced traders or traders from the big shops that have been cut? I don't know if there are opportunities actually to swoop up talent at the moment, given it's a heated market. It is
a heated market. We're trying to embrace technology as much as possible. As I said, we're in 2003 of the tech era, so it's still embracing technology, but still using those, finding people who know the fundamentals of the 101.
How do you keep your talent? That's the other big question.
Hopefully passion as well. But we have a very unique strategy. We have a unique approach, and we've been very picky on our clients and our investors, and we love working with them and sort of build a rapport through that.
And over the next 12 months, what do you see as your biggest challenge? If there's one priority, I know it's never fair to ask for one only, but
yeah, I mean the midterms are a great opportunity for the US, but obviously things are going to change. We're seeing a lot of geopolitics at the moment. There's probably a few more weeks of that, including what will probably happen in Cuba. But the Republicans have to get serious about the midterms. They know that, and let's see how that plays out and what impact that has on markets as well.
Okay, Stirling, thanks so much for joining us. Stirling Larkin, there, Chief Executive of Foxtail Pine. Now, up next, of course, we'll have a roundup of the markets. We'll keep an eye on everything that's happening in the Middle East. But up next, it's Bloomberg Brief, and this is Bloomberg.